She thought she married a businessman, calm, predictable, safe. What she didn't know was that when you betray a man who builds empires, he doesn't break, he calculates. People say I'm like a bulldog in human form, tenacious, straight to the point, and once I sink my teeth into something, I won't let go. I don't quit. When I start down a path, I follow it through no matter how long it takes. A lot of folks call me lucky, but the truth is, luck has very little to do with it. I'm just always ready. Whatever I'm doing, I prepare for it thoroughly. My goal is to set myself up for success every single time. If I had to compare myself to an animal, I'd say I'm a mix of a wolf and a bulldog. The bulldog part handles the grit and persistence. The wolf? That's my strategic side. I look at every situation from multiple angles, always hunting for weak spots, whether I'm dealing with a new business or trying to size someone up. That's why I never take anything, or anyone, at face value. Research is everything both in business and in life. I dig deep. I mean really deep. If I'm about to work with a new vendor or take on a client, I make sure I know exactly who I'm dealing with. They might look squeaky clean on paper, but a bit of digging could uncover messy details, like a nasty divorce that's wrecking their business or an old bankruptcy that never quite healed. Sometimes I find out they're tangled up in personal stuff or hanging around people who could damage their reputation, and mine by association. You could say I operate a bit like a venture capitalist. Some people might call me a high-end money lender, though that sounds a little cold. The truth is, I've built up some wealth over time and I've made it grow by investing carefully. Every opportunity gets a full review, data, history, risks. If it makes sense, I get involved. If not, I don't hesitate to walk away. And when I do invest, I stay hands-on. I've had to step in and either fix or shut down operations more than once. That's never easy, but I see it as a challenge, not a failure. One of my early wins was with an advertising firm I backed. They took off faster than expected. Before long, big names were coming in with buyout offers. That's when Bob and Janet, owners of the firm, asked me to take a look. The offer on the table was tempting, no doubt. But after reviewing everything with them, I pointed out the potential they hadn't tapped yet. Their brand was gaining momentum, and with the right push they could outgrow any of those buyers. It wasn't time to sell, it was time to scale. Then there's Harry. His personal life spilled over into his work in the worst way. His wife, tired of his constant cheating, hit him hard during their divorce, and it threw his entire operation into chaos. Stories like his are exactly why I leave no stone unturned. Turns out, Harry's wife knew more about his business than he ever let on. And once she was finished airing everything out during their messy split, the IRS showed up at his door. It was a full-blown financial ambush. The only reason Harry didn't end up behind bars was because I stepped in. It came down to the wire, but he scraped by, though not without consequences. The penalties and back taxes alone added up to just over $214,000. I lent him the money to cover it, which, I won't lie, brought a bit of heat on me too. But because I run everything by the book, my transparency held up under scrutiny. Eventually, Harry paid me back just as we agreed, every cent on schedule. Somewhere along the line, life got a little more interesting. I met Jamie at a friend's gathering, smart, quick-witted, and surprisingly down-to-earth. What started as casual conversation quickly turned into something more engaging. She complimented how fit I looked, and I gave credit where it was due, to Todd, my longtime personal trainer and nutrition coach. Todd kept me in shape not just physically but mentally. He laid out my routines, my meals, even helped me recalibrate during stressful times. I always had a soft spot for craft beer, though I'll admit, not every bottle lived up to the hype. A lot of small batch brewers confuse strength with quality, thinking more alcohol made for better flavor. That's how I found Trevor. His homemade brews were complex, rich, balanced. I believed in him and I backed his startup. At first, he was hesitant, overwhelmed by the legal and financial maze ahead. But with a little guidance and the right structure, he got on track. Jamie and I kept talking over dinner and I opened up a bit. I told her about some of my worst business blunders, how each one taught me something new. She laughed, genuinely, and asked, "You really thought that was a good idea?" I smiled. Not now, but back then it seemed like a no-brainer. Her laughter was easy, warm. I found myself enjoying her reactions as much as the stories. After dinner, I surprised her with tickets to a local amateur production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The cast was raw but enthusiastic, and the audience? Fully invested. When Dr. Frankenfurter made his grand entrance, Jamie burst out laughing so hard, she quite literally leapt into my lap. We ended up tangled on the floor, and when I looked up, somehow, don't ask me how, she had the ring on her finger. We didn't waste time. That June we tied the knot in front of family and friends, with just the right mix of elegance and fun. For our honeymoon, we picked a sun-soaked spot where shoes and shirts were mostly optional. It was relaxing, freeing, and exactly what we both needed. Coming home, we settled into life together with surprising ease. I kept running my business as usual, and Jamie continued to thrive in her role. She was excellent at what she did, and it showed. Around that time, I made a serious investment in a private security company. The owner at the time had been running things with more ego than strategy, and the firm was suffering because of it. I stepped in and did what I do, restructured the mess and put it back on solid footing. Jamie, meanwhile, joined a local theater group. It was a huge time commitment, but she loved it, so I didn't complain. Eventually, I told her I missed our quiet evenings, just the two of us. She understood and agreed to cut back, deciding to sit out every third production. Through the theater, Jamie became close with several of the performers. A few of them, Celeste and Jack in particular, became regulars at our house. There was always a bit of playful banter, some teasing and inside jokes, but nothing crossed the line. When it was just us, they respected the space Jamie and I had built. And then, one afternoon, Jamie and I found ourselves talking about Jack. Jamie and I had a serious talk one evening, about Jack and Celeste, and, more specifically, their open relationship. It wasn't the kind of thing I expected to come up, but Jamie had always been open-minded, and we tried to keep our conversations honest, even when they veered into uncomfortable territory. She didn't bring it up to stir drama, more like a passing curiosity, but it left me thinking about the dynamic they had. Not my style, but to each their own. Around that same time, Jack approached me with a business idea. A long-abandoned restaurant space had just gone up for sale, and he thought we could do something special with it. After some discussion, we decided to go for it. We completely renovated the place from the ground up. New kitchen, fresh interior, full design overhaul. I brought in a top-tier chef I had connections with. He had a sterling reputation in the culinary world, and I trusted his vision. Years ago, I'd sunk money into a similar venture, but it tanked after a year thanks to poor leadership and a chef who couldn't handle the pressure. This time was different. I took a majority stake, 60%, while the chef, Nathan, invested a modest sum and offered his name and expertise for the remaining 40%. Our thorough planning paid off. Renovations wrapped ahead of schedule and under budget, and Jamie's marketing plan knocked it out of the park. Opening night was buzzing. During the launch there was a lot to juggle. Press, food critics, influencers. Gene, one of the line cooks, was nervous about the spotlight. He was talented but not exactly a people person. "Don't worry," Celeste told me. "I'll keep Gene focused. But I need to be here too. I'm interviewing Nathan later, getting shots of the dishes and chatting with guests." Jamie nodded. "Is it okay if Celeste and I head in now? I want to experience the place like a customer tonight. You and Jack can join us in a bit." I could tell Celeste wasn't thrilled with Jack, who was grinning like nothing was wrong. Still, Jamie's enthusiasm made it easy to say yes. Later that night, at a celebratory party, things got weird. Cynthia was flirting hard with Philip, and Jack and Celeste looked like they were mid-fight on the dance floor. Then I caught Jack dancing far too close to Jamie. His hands were a little too familiar, and Jamie, who'd had a few drinks, wasn't exactly pushing him away. My stomach knotted. Before I could say anything, Celeste marched over, yanked Jamie toward me, and shoved her into my arms. "Don't be an idiot," she said loud enough for both of us to hear. "Dance with your husband." She dragged Jack away with a huff, and they didn't look like a couple in sync. We left as soon as the song ended. On the way home, Jamie was quiet, unusually so. By the time we pulled into the driveway, she was asleep. I thought about leaving her in the car, but eventually helped her inside. Despite the chaos, the restaurant was a hit. We were already lining up plans to expand. Atlanta and Jacksonville were next. If those went well, we'd be looking at national and even Canadian locations in a few years. The ad team was building campaigns for everything: cookbooks, chef appearances, maybe even television segments. The whole package. At some point, Jean might have to step back from kitchen duties to keep up with the attention. Jamie gave me a look when I brought it up. "You always play the long game, don't you?" she said. "Your investments always seem kind of random, but I guess they aren't." She was starting to see the bigger picture. That night, after the party, after too many drinks, Jamie's behavior had rattled me. We talked the next morning, sober and serious. She admitted she'd gotten carried away and promised it wouldn't happen again. I believed her. Alcohol or not, it wasn't her usual self. Jamie threw herself into her theater work afterward. Rehearsals, fittings, rewrites, tech checks. It consumed her evenings. Especially for period or fantasy shows, the prep work was endless. But I supported her. It made her happy. And I knew from experience that what you put into something is exactly what you get back. It was clear we needed someone new to handle the business side of things. Until then, everyone figured I could hold it down just fine, and truthfully I found myself drawn in. The business was more complex than I anticipated, but that made it all the more fascinating. If Celeste's pitch for her show got the green light, I'd be stepping in as executive producer. I wasn't exactly sure what that would entail, but I was flattered they trusted me with the role. One evening I leaned in and kissed Jamie on the cheek. She looked tired. The pressure of launching Celeste's production was wearing on her, and the friction with Jack wasn't helping. "It's like he's completely checked out," she said, her voice low. "We don't talk anymore. Barely spend time together. Not just as friends, nothing." I didn't know what to say. I understood creative tension, but what I saw unfolding was something else. When the show finally debuted, it all came to a head. The final scene was unexpected. It played out in a cheap motel set with a king-sized bed front and center. The characters, played by Jamie and Philip, were supposed to be consummating their fictional romance. Philip, ever the showman, strutted onto stage in little more than ego and a pair of briefs. Jamie followed, wearing a translucent red nightgown that stopped far too high for comfort. As the two reached for each other, the lights faded to black. There was no applause. Just silence. A few sharp intakes of breath. Then, after what felt like a full minute, a hesitant smattering of claps. Celeste had taken a gamble reintroducing that scene without informing the board. Now the theater faced a public relations mess. They scrambled to contain it, telling patrons the bedroom sequence hadn't been part of rehearsals and was improvised during the final run. It didn't help much. Cynthia, one of the cast members, stormed into the lobby that night shouting, "It's just a play. It's not real." But that's the thing. Just because it's pretend doesn't mean the emotions surrounding it are. Watching a staged version of your wife in an intimate scene, even if scripted, still hits like a brick to the chest. You can dress it up in dialogue, call it art, or hide behind the fourth wall, but it doesn't soften the impact. Her body, her voice, her expressions. That doesn't just vanish when the curtain falls. Cynthia kept ranting. I cut her off. "Don't feed me that tired line about performance art. If it were your partner up there, would you really be so casual about it?" Her face drained of color. That dress she was so confident in now looked more like armor that didn't fit. Later, I sat through a string of voicemails from Jamie. The same story over and over. It was just acting, nothing happened, you're making this bigger than it is. But not once did I hear the words, "I'm sorry." No ownership. No understanding of what it felt like sitting in that theater, hearing the crowd gasp. I stopped listening after message number 8. Deleted the rest. The board met shortly afterward. Most were sympathetic, but caught off guard. They hadn't known Celeste reinstated the motel scene. As damage control, Jack and Philip were both suspended for the remainder of the season. Cynthia, after her outburst, was also barred. But the damage lingered. One text Jamie sent afterward still echoes in my mind. "If you and I ever fell apart, I'd never do something like that to you, not like that. If we were ever to be with other people, I'd want it to be something meaningful. Respectful." It was hard to know what to do with that. Part confession. Part justification. But none of it felt like healing. I imagine, if it ever happened, it'd be something special, Jamie had once told me. Even over the phone, I could practically hear her blush. Her tone softened for a moment before she quickly wrapped things up. "I've got to run, but call me later if you want to go over those production ideas." At least one bridge seemed repaired. Celeste and I had managed to talk through things. But Jamie? That was another matter entirely. When I finally called her, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Be at the house by 6, I said flatly. "Come with your head on straight. No lies. If I find out you were unfaithful, that's it. I won't be talked into staying." I didn't let her respond. When she walked through the door, I didn't sugarcoat it. If Jack pressured you into that scene, you could have said no. You had choices. You chose to follow through, knowing full well it would embarrass me, humiliate me. I took a breath, held it. And if you'd at least thrown on a robe for the curtain call, maybe, I could have looked past it. But you didn't. You stood up there in practically nothing, and now everyone in town has that image burned into their heads. I was drained. My words came slow, deliberate. "We're done talking about this tonight." Jamie lost it. She screamed, cried, threw herself against me like that would erase everything. "Please, Roy," she begged. It wasn't like that. But it was. Maybe not in her mind, but it sure felt like betrayal in mine. In the weeks that followed, the theater board scrambled. They came to me, hat in hand, offering a seat on the board. I wasn't one to hold grudges, but I made my conditions clear. No more surprises. Total transparency. If Celeste hadn't personally asked me, I would have walked away. But she made a heartfelt appeal, and in the end, I agreed. We worked together to build a new season, this one focused on family shows and children's theater. I even stepped on stage again, playing a part in a junior adaptation of Into the Woods. Local critics gave it a decent nod, and for once the theater was buzzing for the right reasons. By then, Celeste had taken on the role of artistic director. She handled it well with care and precision. One afternoon, Jamie brought up something unexpected. "There's a tiny town about 15 minutes away," she said. "Less than 5,000 people. Their community theater is struggling. They're only planning 3 plays this year. They need someone with experience." I raised an eyebrow. "And they want you?" they asked. "They're desperate," she said. "I was thinking we could both join. Might be good for us. You've got some time, right? Do they know about your last performance?" I asked, my voice even. Jamie blushed, her eyes flickering. "No. I'd rather not bring it up." She took my hand gently. "Roy, I miss it. I miss the quiet mind I had when I was doing something creative with people who cared." I didn't answer right away. I just nodded. Later that season, we staged another youth production. I made sure every woman involved, on stage or behind the scenes, received a rose during the post-show celebration. It was a small gesture, but meaningful. During the mingling, I still had on my cow costume, hat and all. A little girl ran up to me giggling, clearly not ready to let the show go just yet. I bent down, mooed playfully, and she burst into laughter. Jamie stood nearby, smiling faintly. She was part of this one too. Maybe not everything was healed, but something was mending. Celeste was back in town, fresh off a shooting schedule, so I invited her to the show. She didn't come alone. She brought along a network exec who, from the moment he walked in, couldn't stop snickering at the quaintness of it all. Kept making offhand remarks about small-town charm and low production values. That was until Celeste cut him off mid-sentence with a look that could slice granite. "You're a guest," she said firmly. "Act like it." He didn't say much after that. We held the after-party at a local ice cream parlor, small but vibrant, with room for kids and enough nostalgia for the adults. It gave us a chance to do something different, more inclusive. The turnout had been so overwhelming we couldn't fit everyone into the venue, so we came up with the Gold Pass idea. Anyone who couldn't get in would receive a free drink in front of line access next time around. People loved it. I had hired Tina to manage the place, a fiery and focused woman I'd met on opening night. Latina, charismatic, with a no-nonsense edge. Turned out she had a degree in hospitality management but had struggled for years to find meaningful work in her field. I saw something in her. Gave her the keys and full managerial control. She earned it. For security, I didn't cut corners. 8 trained professionals, 5 men and 3 women, covered everything. 2 stayed inside the club, 2 patrolled the lot, and the others rotated. No one slipped through unnoticed. That night, the playbill listed Philip again. His bio was short but telling. Local businessman, former professional actor, theatrical enthusiast. My stomach turned. I didn't want to confront Jamie in public, so I waited. At the post-show mingle, she picked up on my mood immediately. She didn't ask questions. Didn't wander. Just stayed at my side, calm and quiet. It wasn't until the drive home that I finally said, "So, when were you planning to tell me Philip was in the show?" She looked over, surprised. "He hasn't been with us long, Roy. And he and I haven't even been in the same rehearsals." I swear. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. "If I ever catch you on stage with him, or even near him, and you don't tell me ahead of time, I'll be gone before the curtain drops." That night I called Jason my guy. "We need to move forward," I said. "When can I get access to her phone?" There was a pause. "Only time it's not glued to her is when she's charging it, right?" "Exactly. After midnight should work. Tomorrow night." "Got it. He can do it from the van. Quicker that way." I felt like a snake. But I needed the truth. And I needed it in plain sight. Later that evening, Jamie and I had one of our more intense moments. She wrapped around me like nothing had ever gone wrong. Fell asleep in my arms, breathing slow and deep. I laid there staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had any idea. I'd built my career by acting decisively, never hesitating, never running from a challenge. And yet here I was, praying that the most meaningful investment of my life, Jamie, wasn't about to collapse under the weight of betrayal. 2 days later the call came. Jamie heard me answer. "What's that about?" she asked casually, walking into the room in one of my shirts. The mayor wants to meet. Talk about expanding. She smirked. Let me guess, he saw the play. Now he wants a piece of the magic. She giggled, curling her arms around me. You lucky boy. You used that line on me the other night, and it was almost too much. You might be walking funny tomorrow. Jason turned off the headphones. I'd cloned Jamie's phone. I had full access now, calls, texts, voicemails, even live conversations. Everything she said, whether on the phone or in person, was being recorded. She talked a lot. At first, I tried using keyword filters to save time, but she dropped enough breadcrumbs about her and Philip's plans that I couldn't risk missing anything. So, now we had to listen to every single word. No exceptions. My ears felt like they were bleeding from the sheer volume of it all. Jason, always calm under pressure, told me the mayor's team would take care of the audio and video setups. I doubt they're dumb enough to use your own house for anything physical, he said, but better safe than sorry. We planned to move on Thursday. Jamie would be at work all day. That night, I'd tell her I had to head out of town for business on Friday and might not be back until Sunday. She already had the motive, this would just hand her the opportunity. I went home that night and stared at the ceiling, wondering what else I could do. Thankfully, I had a mild sleep aid I used for travel, and I managed to drift off not long before Jamie came home. She slid into bed beside me, wrapping her arm around my chest like nothing in the world was off. By morning, everything was in motion. Jason's guy would swing by around 7 o'clock to collect the clone device. He'd take it out to dinner, on our dime, and spend an hour walking downtown before returning it to the hotel. Jamie's calls would automatically forward to a burner phone I'd set up. She wouldn't suspect a thing. I actually shivered at the thought, half in gratitude, half in dread. Thank God Jason was on my side. Later that weekend, we checked into a quiet resort out in the country, just the two of us pretending we were still okay. But the dining room? That was a shock. Celeste, Jay, Bob and Jan from the ad agency, Rick from production, and Chef G were all there. Like fate had rounded up every major character in this saga and put them under one chandelier. Monday morning at 10 o'clock sharp, I got an email from the best divorce attorney in the state. A list of what I needed to bring. The most important item? The PRUP, our private prenup, not even known to most of our closest friends. I kept it quiet for a reason. Nobody thought I'd ever need it. But here we were. The thing is, when someone wrongs me, something inside shifts. I don't raise my voice. I don't throw things. I act. Cold, methodical, and precise. One of my first investments crashed and burned years ago after a partner siphoned funds and drove us into bankruptcy. I clawed my way back and I made it a mission to track that man's every move for years after. Anytime he started to rise, I was there to drag him back down. Quietly. Consistently. Until he disappeared entirely from the business world. Now, I was preparing something similar, affectionate retribution if you want to call it that. Not necessarily legal, but devastating all the same. Emotional documentation. Psychological profiles. Affection maps. Timelines. For every player involved. Jason looked over the table of files. Jesus, he muttered. Once you commit, you really commit. It'll cost, I said. But I want it done. I'll brief the team while you move on it. That morning I met Celeste and Jay for breakfast. Jay looked stunned. Celeste? She just gave a slow, knowing smile. Poor Jamie, she said softly. All this time, and she never figured out who she married. This won't just end a relationship. It'll dismantle reputations, careers, friendships, and probably leave a trail of guilt that never really goes away. I seriously doubt they ever saw it coming. I'd found out something unexpected. Back when Jamie was still married to Philip, she had been nearing the end of a completely different life. Most people never knew she had been a professional MMA fighter, known in the circuit as Catherine the Great. The name fit, tall, powerful, commanding. She never clinched a title, but she earned solid paydays and walked away respected. Unfortunately, Philip walked away with most of her earnings. By the time she caught on, he'd drained a good portion of her accounts. After confronting him, she told herself if he could lie in a marriage, he could lie in business. So she started watching. Following his behavior. That's when she found him dirty again, just in time to stop him from stealing the last bit of what was hers. It was a lesson she clearly didn't learn. That day, the day I had everything planned. The timing, the logistics, the optics. I had 2 off-duty officers standing by just in case things turned messy. 3 of my bodyguards had been repurposed for something more theatrical. They were also my process servers for the day, each armed with a dozen red roses. When Jamie walked into the venue and saw me across the room, she lit up. There was this almost giddy expression on her face. But I didn't move. Didn't smile. Her expression shifted quickly, brows pulling together as she stepped toward me. One of the servers cut her off gently. "These are from an admirer," he said, confirming her name. She blinked. "What?" He handed her a large manila envelope with a subtle but practiced formality. "You've been served." He raised a discreet camera and snapped a photo of her holding the envelope, proof of service. She stood there stunned, clutching roses in one hand and legal documents in the other. No words. Just silence. That envelope netted her about $175,000 in assets. No small sum. But it didn't even begin to make up for what she had truly lost. And she knew it. It always puzzled me. Jamie had the metaphorical keys to the vault: financial security, trust, stability. All she had to do was not rob the bank. Instead, she tried to run off with the loot while the doors were still wide open for her. She gambled her future on a lie, thinking I'd never know. In one of the rare conversations we had after, I asked her point blank, "Why did you believe everything he told you?" "You had the money. You could have hired a private investigator. You could have asked questions. Hell, you could have talked to me." She didn't answer. And I realized she didn't want the truth. She wanted the illusion. Later that week, I met a man wearing a crumpled paper hat who ran a donut shop out near the state line. He was maybe 53, a thick Cajun accent rolling out of his mouth like syrup. Half the time I had to guess what he meant. But he radiated joy. Pure, uncomplicated enthusiasm. I tried to talk business. He waved me off. "I make the donuts," he said. "My daughter, she runs the numbers. If she says okay, we do business." And just like that, I was reminded, some people still knew where their boundaries were. They didn't pretend. They didn't cheat. They just lived their lives with clear intentions and trusted the ones they loved to handle the rest. If only Jamie had been that kind of person. I had to get back to work. That afternoon, I scheduled a 6 p.m. meeting, grabbed another molasses donut, couldn't resist, and walked out into the future. 8 months after we inked the deal, we opened our first shop in New Orleans. At first, the locals tried to keep it quiet as if hiding a gem. But that didn't last long. The ad agency ran a brilliant campaign and the word spread fast. The demand was wild. Within weeks, we were so overrun that we had to set up a second location just to produce enough dough to meet demand. Next came Shreveport. Then Baton Rouge. The momentum snowballed, especially after a segment aired on the Food Network. Our donut stole the show. At the top of the episode, Celeste gave a heartfelt disclaimer, said she was a personal friend of mine and wanted to be transparent. But that didn't stop people from flooding the doors. The ownership structure was smart, classic buyout clause. 5% of the business transferred each year to the local operators, until eventually they'd own it outright. That kept them motivated and grounded. By then I'd started seeing Celeste. The courtship was short, just 4 months, but it didn't feel rushed. I wasn't too busy at the time, just managing my investments, mostly from my home office and watching the returns flow in. Celeste, on the other hand, was in the thick of it. Filming her shows, promoting her book, touring from city to city. I tagged along a few times and got a first-hand look at her work ethic. It was serious business. 5-hour book signings. Posing with every last fan. Refusing to leave until the final autograph was scribbled and the final photo snapped. No shortcuts, no complaints. Just grit and grace. At home I had my little piece of peace. A 4-bedroom ranch-style house with all the comforts. Gas grill, charcoal grill, fire pit, even a clay oven for when I felt adventurous. I'd converted 1 bedroom into a home office with high-speed internet and could run the show from there. It was private, off the beaten path. Perfect. In the mornings I liked to slip out early with my kayak and hit the lake. Nothing fancy, just a solid paddle before the big boats came in and turned the water rough. I kept that time sacred. Quiet. Focused. One evening I was about to step into the hot tub when I noticed Celeste outside, leaning over a small table, holding a card. Her eyes were narrowed, focused. I walked over casually, but I could already see the name on it. It was from a case long closed but not forgotten. Years ago, I'd helped locate a man who'd done some real damage, financial and personal. He ran until he couldn't. The investigators I'd hired pulled every string, flipped every contact until they found him. When they did, he was turned over to the authorities without delay. He was sentenced to 7 years. Almost made parole too, but a fight inside cost him. He ended up serving his full term plus another 18 months. Every now and then, I wondered how he was holding up. He had that delicate frame, soft features. I'd always imagined he had to adapt quickly in there, probably didn't have a choice. Celeste held the card like it had weight to it. "Who's this from?" she asked, her voice low. I looked at her, unsure how much to say. "It's from a chapter that's closed," I replied. "But one I don't mind keeping the bookmark in."